Yo, what up? It's CodeBro, and today we're going to talk more about ReactMotion, the library that makes animation easy using physics. So today I want to talk more about the mechanics and the code that is used with it. I've made two more examples, StaggeredMotion and TransitionMotion, and they are the last two components in ReactMotion. And I'll do a separate video for each one. But before we get into that, it's important that I can show you sort of how it works, because I think this is the learning curve that a lot of people trip up on. They kind of get intimidated because they see it's done in a sort of reacty kind of way. It's not just a simple transition with a time. You know, like if you were to do a fade in transition, you'd just simply type something like, opacity. You'd write, let's say, transition, opacity, open quote, and then maybe like 200 milliseconds or something like this. And that would do a fade in, and that's very easy to read. ReactMotion works in a completely different way to that. And once you understand it, it's actually easy, but in the beginning it's difficult. So let's start with the basic motion. I'll go through all of them and show you how these two work, but really I'll do this one, I'll do the basic motion in more detail so that, because I think once you understand that, you understand the other two easier. So basically, motion has a component here, and it has some required props that you need to provide the component. Actually, I don't know if default style is required, but definitely a good idea to put that in there, because it certainly is required for example, staggered motion, but we'll get to that soon. Anyway, style is definitely required, obviously. And there's one other prop which is required, but it's not so obvious because it's not actually put in line here, it's right here. And this is, in React, all components have a this.props.children prop, a children prop, which is basically everything within the component here. So the child prop in ReactMotion is a function. And here they've called it interpolating style, another way to put off newcomers that are already intimidated. But basically, it's pretty easy to understand. It's just like a style that is like put into the component. You could say it's like fed into the component from the motion, from the outside, because it all depends on what you have here. I'll go to my example. Where is it? Bear with me for a second. It's ReactMotion, and by the way, all of this code you can find on my GitHub. So feel free to fork that or do whatever you like with it. So here I've got motion, and I just write an X because I don't need to write interpolating style. I know what it is. And then I feed that X into a translate. Now, it's super important to remember, I'll start at the beginning, I'm jumping ahead. So here you can see I do not have a default style, so obviously it's not required for the basic motion. But I do have a style, and when the state is open, the spring is 80, and when it's closed, it's 0. And then I've got my configs here. So basically that 80, when it's open, is fed into here, and then that in turn is fed into here. And it's very important to remember that ReactMotion can only use numbers here and here. You cannot put like a string, like I couldn't, for example, have this whole thing in here, and then have like, is open, blah, 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 you know what I mean. What is within the spring has to be a number. There's no way around that. And then ReactMotion basically does some calculations based on the configurations and does its physics magic and feeds some numbers into here. which in turn changes this. So that's how it works. That's if you understand that, then you basically understand React Motion. There's a few interesting things to think about here. One is that often it's encouraged to use, translate 3D. And I could be wrong about this, but I think that doesn't make any difference here, because basically you're just receiving a single value here, and it has no effect on the transition. So it's not like the GPU, the GPU? Yeah, the GPU from the browser is calculating anything. It's just simply receiving and resetting this transform, which surely the magic of the animation, or the, let's say, smoothness of the animation should be done via the physics that are coming through from motion. Okay, so that's the basic idea. Just remember, okay, here we only have two required props, style and a function, which feeds into this.props.children. And also remember, by the way, that this x should correlate to... Oh, okay. I was thinking actually it should be something like .x, but no. Yeah, actually, I think that's actually correct. I think I've done it kind of a very rushed version of this, actually, because I think what you can do is something like, y, let's just say 10, just obviously surround it with spring, but then you can put like multiple values, like x, x.y, x.x. But actually I'm surprised this even works. The x is feeding through and feeding that. Let's go to actually their own docs. Okay, because the whole style is going through there a bit, but still, yeah, I think that's interesting that it actually works the way I've set it up. Anyway, we should play around with it, because this definitely in like StaggeredMotion and transition, this is actually an object, or an array of objects. So obviously here it's just simply feeding a number through, which I'm super surprised by. I thought actually it should be something like, you should put that as style, style, and then you write here something like style.x. Actually, I'll fire up the dev mode and see if we can play around with that, because it's interesting. Okay, so while I'm doing that, I'll show you staggered and transition. So I'm just going to leave this as it is and see if it works. Okay, so staggered motion. Now this looks freaking complicated. This looks so hard, but it's not too bad. Now, one thing that will trip up newcomers is for sure this default style here, because this actually determines excuse me, how many staggers you actually have in here. So the length of this array, here it's like 6, you've got 6, determines how many of these are produced. So basically this returns an array, and then you can like map that array. Oh, sorry, how many of these it produces. You can map that array and then feed the style. See, you see there that the style is in fact an object. We've got x here, and you access the object key x through this, which is like the info that you're mapping from interpolating styles. Here I did write interpolating styles because it is a bit more complicated, I suppose. And the basic logic of it, it's super cool. It's if it's the first one, then you can set whatever change you want to happen. So obviously there are our configs, and here is open, exactly like last time. But then every single index after 0 will be altered based on the previous style. Because as I mentioned in the last thing, this is feeding through feeding through an object or a number, let's see. And here we are altering each one of these to be based on the previous one, and that produces a sort of stagger effect. Let's see, sorry, I just got to check something. Oh, yeah. Okay, let's see if this is working. So basic motion. Oh, okay, so obviously there's an error here. Yeah, okay, so I screwed. Oh no, webpack.json not defined. Why? Oh no, okay. Oh, that's okay. I'll deal with that later. Oh my god. Okay, here we go. Okay, each iterator should have a key element, intro item. Okay, there's a few errors in this code I need to fix up. Anyway, what we're interested is here. Yeah, okay, cannot read property X of undefined. So in fact, I was wrong. This is not an object. This is simply a number, which is calculated based on physics, that will produce our animation. So what we have to do is change this to style, and if we refresh, I'm sure this will work. It's got hot loader, but I want to, hot loader doesn't correctly reset everything when it comes to React motion. Okay, and there we go. Oh, uh-oh, there's some problems here. Okay, there's there's a lot of errors in my code. I should not have, I'm not sure why this is, in fact. Anyway, you're just gonna have to trust me that this works. Let's see, is there anything simple I can, let's try reload again. Huh, that's strange. Try and go back into it. Yeah, that's pretty weird, because it was working like just a second ago. StaggeredMotion works, there we go. So I did a video of basic motion last time, and you can see that working in that video, but not in this one. I'm not sure what the heck is wrong today. But yeah, you can see StaggeredMotion is working. That's really super cool. I'll do a video on how you can set all that up later. Okay, so that's the mechanics of StaggeredMotion. I'll do it, as I said, I'll do a video later and it'll be clearer. Now TransitionMotion, same thing. You've got, except this takes some interesting other props. Will enter, which is a function. Will leave, which is a function. Styles, which is an array. Map returns an array. The styles here also returns an array, but obviously it has this special function here, which in fact I haven't done much experimenting with this, but I'm sure you can play around with that and get some other interesting results from it. Maybe, like, for example, applying a special formula to everything after 0. Anyway, okay, so we got a function, array, and then we have another function as this.props.children. And then you can map the result of that function and produce your elements, which you can then add and subtract. Hopefully this works. Yes. So you can see here. Okay, the will enter isn't working, but it's not so important. You can see that the will leave is working. Okay, so the idea is that here you can unmount a component and it will animate until, it will animate and then it will unmount after the animation. All right. Yeah, sorry, I've been doing a lot of improvements on my website and I haven't really checked if it's functional. So I should have done that, especially before pushing to production. But I'm pretty relaxed when it comes to this website. Anyway, cool. So that's how it works. Just remember that use the basic motion as your template for understanding it. The things that get more complicated with staggered and transition is just this function here is kind of weird. Normally, it returns an array in the other ones. But I think the difficult learning curve is simply knowing about this function here, and it's all important. In fact, one way you can avoid mistakes is just by copying and pasting from these docs here. In fact, I do that often when I need to simply get something up and running. I'll just copy and paste it. But just remember, the devil is in the detail. You need to change all of these H's into something else or it won't work, you know. So yeah, just be careful there. All right, thanks for listening. Any questions, write in the comments, and I'll see you later.